But anyways, like Ali said, my name's Cory Martin, forecaster here at WFO Des Moines, Iowa. Myself and Zach Hiris out at WFO Boulder are lead developers of the Central Region IDSS Builder project. And before I get going, I'd also like to give a special shout out and thank you to Jerry Wienfeld and Chris Stumpf up at WFO Milwaukee for their significant contributions to this project, as well as to the Central Region DSS team for helping to bring this initiative across the finish line. So today we're going to discuss what we have rolled out to the field for our next iteration of this project. And most of you should already have some level of familiarity since the initial rollout was back in April. But just to recap, the IDSS Builder is an entirely cloud-based tool residing in Google Slides that is used by Central Region WFOs to create DSS packets. And the DSS packet is a core set of foundational slides and pages for use in high-level partner IDSS, such as webinars, PDFs, or email blasts. So the builder can also support non-core partner products such as social media and weather story graphics. And IDSS Builder version 2 will provide another level of functionality and flexibility in creating DSS content when compared to version 1. And so for this update, our team really focused on incorporating feedback from the field, adding tools to further improve the efficiency and consistency of IDSS creation, and also unlocking additional forecaster time to invest in developing more non-routine, value-added content to enhance and contextualize your messaging for all possible stakeholders. So this presentation is not intended to be a step-by-step instructional overview of how to use IDSS Builder. We do have content available with the rollout that will help you with that. But instead, we're going to go over the implementation timeline and the notable changes coming out. All right, so with the timeline, we did roll out the beta version 2 to a handful of offices, mostly in the Rocky Mountains. We're given the green light to beta test back in October 12, and this was just to give them a leg up on preparing their templates for the earlier onset of the winter season and the higher DSS demands that come along with it. Everything with beta testing went mostly well, and that allowed us to move ahead to the Central Region rollout back on Monday, the 1st. So the goal for full version 2 transition across the board is before the Thanksgiving holiday, which will allow offices about 2 to 3 weeks to go through the tech note and get the new templates up and running. So hopefully this will give you time before the winter season DSS kicks into full gear. And lastly, the new templates are also set up to eventually replace PowerPoint for our weather story efforts, as well as leverage the Google API to provide a new method of image hosting and ingest into the templates. So the implementation dates for both of these are still yet to be determined, but I'll have some more information on that later on in this presentation. So now let's move on to what has changed from version 1 with this latest round of templates. And again, quite a bit of the updates were founded on feedback from field offices, so don't be afraid to submit your ideas to the IDSS Builder team. So right off the bat, the most obvious change is the new background. And here's the background that you're all familiar with, which is deployed in version 1 back in April. And then here's the refresh. It should look familiar to you by this point. The change was done to match up with PMO guidelines. The default font was also updated to Helvetica New, so if you happen to add your own text boxes at any point during your briefing creation, you want to be sure to match up with that just to stay consistent. Otherwise, there was very little change to the overall look and feel of the templates. And similar to before, we're still offering both the landscape and portrait templates, although the landscape should still be the preferred choice since it offers a seamless integration to a webinar. And the portrait template should be considered by those that have some geographical disadvantages that make the portrait layout more desirable. Examples of this include needing to show the entirety of Lake Michigan or perhaps a state forecast for the state of Minnesota. But otherwise, we recommend going with the landscape template if you didn't make the switch already with the initial IDSS Builder rollout. So we did make an update to the timestamp embedded in the upper right corner of the slide background. In the previous version, you had to manually force it to update, but this time around it will be automated. And completing the initial template configuration will put it on a simple cron that fires each minute, thus eliminating the need for manual updates. And if you come across any issues with the timestamp, be sure to let us know, but it's been very stable to this point. So next on the updated feature list is overhauled background scripts and error tracking. And most of this won't be readily evident to the average user, but the team has made some significant changes under the hood that should hopefully allow for faster script execution times and a diminished error rate. So one example of this is the scripts will rebuild your folder directories if a key one has been renamed or removed. That way, a specific folder will always be available if a script depends on it to run properly. And this was a common problem with the initial rollout, as offices were deleting or renaming folders. So in addition, the scripts also talk back to the developers a bit, in that most errors are copied out and formatted into a logging sheet for us to look over during troubleshooting. So there is one other update with the overall look and feel that'll be very visible. In the version 1 templates, it was difficult to know if the scripts were still running for functions that take a bit longer to execute. So for example, the packet send to web scripts could take anywhere from 30 to 45 seconds to run for the most intensive briefings. Well, now the new templates will populate a loading spinner for scripts that take a few moments to run to help fill that void. That way you know there's still activity ongoing in the background. And you'll be arriving at your destination shortly, so to say. If the scripts error out, the spinner will stop and be replaced with a more informative error message, which will give you troubleshooting guidance or information to pass along to the project developers. So on that note, and this isn't an update per se, but for version 2, we'll be making a more concerted effort to direct users to the trouble ticket and feature request Google form. So it can be accessed from 2 different places in the slide templates, both from the sidebar GUI that you'll be interacting with a lot as you go through your template creation, and also from the IDSS Builder menu from the toolbar at the top. And here's the form, and using the form will centralize error reporting and requests for future improvements. So anyone can load up a view-only version of the landing page for all trouble tickets and feature requests, which developers will update with feedback and other information. So you can go ahead and use it as a reference to see if someone else has reported a similar problem and if any corrective action has been taken. All right, moving on. This will take us to the bundler, which I personally believe will be the most impactful update with version 2. The core function of the bundler was more or less focused on the most requested feature from version 1, which was to provide an easy way for offices to build and save slide sets for different weather types or routine briefings. So instead of creating multiple slide files to serve as briefing templates for different weather types such as severe storms, winter weather, marine, etc., the bundler will keep everything housed in just one template and ready to be loaded on demand. So this not only eliminates the hassle of maintaining and reconfiguring multiple slide files whenever the regional baseline templates are updated, but the bundler should also save you a considerable amount of time and promote more briefing to briefing consistency. And that just comes about by being able to load up the same preset template every time. It can be found at the top of the IDSS Creator GUI sidebar at right, and it should be fairly straightforward to use. So you start off by building your slides and save them as a bundle, and then you can recall the bundle at any time. Just pick your file from the drop-down menu and hit load. I'll quickly walk you through an example from WFO Des Moines, but again, there is more intensive directions and actually a video instruction available with the rollout materials. So I'll quickly walk you through the example here from WFO Des Moines, and once the bundle slides are loaded, a window populates with the number of linked images that were replaced and updated, as well as a breakdown of each linked URL for your awareness. So to leverage this feature, you'll want to make sure all possible images are linked to a URL, and this can be done by loading graphics from the sidebar GUI or go the manual route by using the Insert Images by URL option from the top menu bar. And once the briefing loads, it's business as usual for the briefing creation standpoint, but with the added benefit of starting well down the line. And so here's the pre-made bundle, which was developed for monthly drought briefing here that we use for the Iowa State Emergency Operations Center. And once it was loaded, all that needed to be done was refreshing just a few text boxes. And so I could go into more detail walking you through, again, the ins and outs of the bundlers, more features and how to use it. But like I said, we have training, video, and documentation. Give you a more thorough walkthrough of how to use it. And it came with the rollout materials. All right, next update of note focused on user-generated images, and there was a lot of work on the Graphy DSS side of the house, including bringing much of the prop messaging suite into the fold, improved rendering of SPC graphics, and also some WPC graphics into the mix now as well. And this was Zach's focus area, so I'll step aside for now and let him take over.
All right, I'm hoping you can hear me with my audio, correct?
Yep, I can hear you, Zach.
Excellent. Okay, so like Cory said, in addition to all of the improvements made to the Google Slides templates, we've also spent a lot of time improving the Graph IDSS batch scripts for version 2. So for those who haven't used these scripts in the past, batch scripts are essentially just a collection of Python scripts that generate up to a couple dozen Graph IDSS images and send them to both the LAN and CMS, all within the span of about 90 seconds, in addition to the CMS waiting times too. So batch scripts can be run either directly through Graph IDSS or through the command line in your AWeB system. And we've added a lot of new variables this time around, including the addition of prompt messaging graphics and some additional variables, as well as other new features. So definitely encourage users to try some of these out this winter. And of course, you can still continue to use DSS Template Builder for all your graphic needs as well. This is just an added option for mass producing images. So in general, while going through DSS Template Builder is typically best if you know which graphics you're looking to use, batch scripts are generally more useful when you're not sure which graphics you want, but you know you're going to be looking to use some soon. So next slide. The first major upgrade in version 2 of the batch scripts was to update the Graph IDSS SPC graphics. So in version 1 of the batch scripts, there was one available to produce SPC outlooks based on the GFE grids. In version 2, we've improved these greatly by utilizing the SPC's provided GeoJSON files. So in the slide, here's an example of the SPC graphics that offices are now able to produce. So you'll notice two important changes. The first is that the domain is flexible to fit the office's needs, and the outlooks are no longer cut off by the edges of their GFE domains. Secondly, prob wind, which is pictured here, prob tor, and prob hail remain available, but you can see that the significant severe hatch is also available on these graphics, denoted by the heavy dashed outline and the slight shade to it. Which is a big upgrade that, at least to my knowledge, wasn't really readily available by any other graphics procedures. So the other big advantage to this is graphics can be produced on demand. So essentially when the script is run, it automatically pulls in the latest data from the SPC, and these images can be easily created and found in the drop-down menu of IDSS Builder under the SPC Outlooks drop-down selection. Next slide. And just to give you an example of what one of the more recent outlooks looked like, so this was actually a small tornado event that occurred during last week's symposium. So this graphic, I just moved our domain here over in Boulder, moved it over to be centered over for Louisiana, and this graphic was actually created 5 minutes after the SPC released Outlook. So between SPC actually releasing the Outlook and being able to generate the images on your own, the whole process takes generally less than 5 to 10 minutes. Next slide. Similar to the SPC outlooks, WPC excessive rainfall outlooks are now also available on demand for any scale the WFO desires. So this is excessive rainfall outlooks for days 1 to 3. And you can also add additional shape files to your template files if you'd like. So if you want to add rivers or lakes, or if you're a Colorado office, typically burn scars become an issue during the summer months. You can add any of your AWeB's maps or other shape files into your template files. So it's another big upgrade for this release. Next slide. Another major improvement with this release is the inclusion of prob messaging graphics. So the new batch scripts have an added a substantial number of graphics for winter storm messaging. So prob snow graphics are now available, and offices that have potential snow or potential ice grids available, those graphics will also be created through these scripts. We've also added the ability to create storm total images with dynamic ranges. That's thanks to a lot of work done by Jerry Wiedenfeld at Milwaukee. And finally, we can also produce 10th, 25th, 75th, 90th percentile snowfall graphics as individual images as well. So a lot of new features for winter storm messaging are coming this time around too. Next slide. So you may be wondering, how do I run these? Like I said at the beginning, there are two main ways to run this, either through the Graph IDSS Batch Manager GUI within the software, or you can run it through command line. So detailed instructions are provided in the help doc that's available as part of the Google Slides templates. And additionally, there's also a short 3.5-minute training video that goes over those two options. So a lot of new images can be produced, and hopefully you find these useful as we get into the winter months. Cory, I'll pass it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Zach. We'll get going more here with more user-generated image options that are available. So with version 2, it now includes a wave component. This feature is still largely under development, but a handful of elements from high-res models are available. Most notably, her model reflectivity and smoke. The background code logic creates a best guess of what model runs are currently available in the wave, and then you can make your own option from the last 3 to 6 runs. The customizations for this feature is still somewhat limited at this point, such as defining geographic features, density of things you want to put in your maps, etc. But picking a default zoom region is included in the template setup and configuration steps. So this is an example of her smoke, which is available on multiple scales by default in the templates. You just have to click the image to drop it into the slide, as you see in the pop-up GUI there. And note that the wave graphics will not pair nicely with the bundler, or at least not yet. And that's because each graphic from the wave is linked to a very specific URL with date and time information. So we may be able to force a URL update in the next iteration, but I'd like to see where future collaboration with the wave team may take us and see if there isn't a simpler solution out there. So down the road, we would also like to build out the ability to generate an animated GIF by selecting multiple images as well. So what we have in there right now is just the early stages of wave integration into this project, but I think field offices could get a lot of use out of what we have in there just right now with this rollout. So we've also included some new hydro tools, and through the development of the IDSS Builder, we've discovered that readily available river flood graphics for messaging are few and far between. So we went ahead and included and developed a few options to provide us with some enhanced messaging included within the packets. So at left is a slide with a hydrograph and forecast flood stage info. Any AHEPS point can be loaded in, and for the example, I picked a forecast point from Central Illinois last week since the options were quite limited at that time. And the script behind the forecast component has some basic logic to attempt detection of a rising or falling forecast, but it is still a bit crude and requires some QC, especially if a secondary crest is expected. And then at right shows a base and tables feature, which will group observed and forecast stage data into a singular table, then colored by flood stage. So this feature does require additional configuration by your hydrologist or a focal point. Then by the spring, we also hope to have AHEPS point maps available through Graph IDSS, similar to what you see on the AHEPS homepage. All right, next we'll move on to some of the expanded messaging tools, which are completely user-driven from start to finish, but leverage GUIs and background scripting to quickly reach a finished product. So the graphical hazards matrix is still in there. It is designed to show the magnitude of impacts through time and location. Some functionality was added to this, most notably our hazard statements for much more than just winter weather. So there's a drop-down menu in the sidebar GUI that can load in severe weather, fire weather, extreme cold, etc. Wording into your slide. We also made a new tool that is similar to the hazard matrix, but this one conveys P-type and intensity. So we reached out to the emerging tech team folks about the color table, but currently there is no national standard, so we're running with what is in there for now, and that attempts to match what we see in GFE and NDFD. So I'm sure there will be some feedback here, and we'll be sure to pass any ideas and suggestions for a color table up the chain. All right, and this next tool is for our mountain offices, and it allows them to quickly and consistently display forecast rain snow levels in a cross-section view. So it's not terribly complicated how this graphic works. The background image is scaled from 0 to 14,000 feet, so a height on the slide corresponds to a height above sea level. And then an image of generic mountains is available, but instructions are available for offices to create their own cross-sections, just like what is shown on the slide. From WFO Boulder of Interstate 70 through their forecast area. And those that want to take this to the next level can make a handful of these graphics through the duration of the event and drop image copies of each slide into an animated GIF generator. And that would make for some excellent webinar content. It won't take you very long to do so either. So lastly, multiple tools are available to explicitly convey forecast confidence for different weather elements or impacts. And for the regional baseline templates, we decided against applying any sort of color scale since we did not want to confuse confidence with intensity. So for example, you can be highly confident that snow amounts will only be light, or maybe low confidence in major travel disruptions. So lots of room for expansion here, and please let us know if you have any ideas that we could possibly scale to a regional level. And the safety messaging option was also given a refresh and now loads each available graphic from a selected weather group. And similar to wave graphics, just click to drop the image into the slide. The safety graphic repository is designed to be collaborative across all offices, or consider it open source. So we all have access to the folders that house these graphics and can make our own contributions, and instructions to do so are included in the help document that came out with the rollout. Now we'll move on to DSS Packet Dissemination, which along with the bundler are probably the most significant upgrades rolling out. I'll show you in a second, but we have made our own version of the PPT Sender, or more commonly known as the Legacy PowerPoint Weather Story add-on, which provide a layer of familiarity and ease with this transition. So not mentioned before was the sidebar GUI navigation update, and this split content creation and dissemination into different windows using the tab seen at the top. So switch to the Sender tab to access the DSS Packet Dissemination tools. Users will have the option to send the packet to CMS or to save it as just a PDF. So you want to select your destination and hit Create, which will bring up a pop-up window to package and send the briefing. So the default settings of several components can be set up in the configuration script, including the default expiration time, file name, maybe end-of-ish chat bot notifications. We've also developed a crude workaround for a common complaint that's switching from PowerPoint to Google Slides. And this was the inability to exclude hidden or skip slides when exporting a PDF. So the custom select option works by holding Control, then select your slides from the left-hand dock. And then a script will create a dummy presentation with the selected slides and then ships off the PDF for you. So again, we'll have more training documentation on sending a packet to the web, and it came with the rollout. So once your briefing hits CMS, the web status section in the sidebar will update and display the expiration time of your packet. It will not update until the briefing has arrived on the web, so that's one way to know that it did reach CMS. So if you want to expire a briefing early, you can also just hit expire. You'll get the standard "Are you sure?" prompt, but this is an easy method to do some basic content management if you want to expire a packet early. So here at WFO Des Moines, we also use this functionality to send up a DSS packet that just has some standard no active briefing wording. And so we have folks that actively go directly to our PDF URL for briefings. So as mentioned before, the templates are ready for Weather Story and Google API integration, but right now these are just kind of carrots dangling out there with an unknown implementation date. So I'm more optimistic about the Weather Story functionality coming out in the near future since we have the dissemination tools already in place. It just needs a bit more collaboration and development to get it working. And once ready, the Weather Story tools will appear below the DSS packet section in the Sender tab. It works very similar and allows for basic tab management by seeing a breakdown of current tab activity and quick expiration options. The bundler is also a great tool for building out new Weather Story templates in Google Slides. And we'll have more information on this in the near future. And then as for the Google API, right now access is shut off for almost all but a few lucky in the agency that were grandfathered in after the policy change a few years ago. The Central Region is currently working through NOAA level channels to get this access restored for all office service accounts. And once that occurs, we will significantly reduce our dependence on CMS for Graphy DSS image hosting, and will provide much more flexibility with what offices can create and make available for auto ingest into your briefings. And that's a wrap on what I had planned to talk about with the DSS Builder version 2.0 rollout. And Allie, I'll toss it back to you.